Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Instead of sifting through all that tarot and telekinesis garbage, why not contribute to my humble Innawoods thread? Truth, fiction, old, new. If it's spooky and in the woods, it's good here.
I usually just lurk, but I guess I'll post some OC. Be me, 9-ish or so in the deep south. Live in a big house with 10 acres of forest around our house. Decide to make a fort in the woods because why not? While walking through the brush and dense palmettos, see something strange nailed to a tree. It's a big white jug with a face or some weird folk art painted onto it. 3 spoopy 5 me. Being a determined dumbass, I take it down and decide to make a fort near that spot anyway. Hoist my shitty flag into a tree and build a little house, and eventually get bored and walk back home with my newly found white jug. I showed it to my dad, figuring he would know. Dad's face goes blank and immediately tells me to put it back where I found it. At the time, he never gave me an explanation, but I did as he said anyway, and hung it back onto the tree. Later on the next few days, he explained that what I had found was a sin jug, or something along those lines, which is apparently an old Southern tradition of getting rid of the guilt you have after doing something really bad. Lots of spoopy shenanigans occurred after, but most were actually inside the house, so IDK if you guys want to hear, due to the fact that it's not Innawoods. So not long after that, I started noticing strange shadows moving in the house. Older brother, let's call him Jake, and older sister, let's call her Jill, have both experienced really bizarre stuff as well. Around 2 a.m., and Jill's bedroom is directly across from mine, at the end of this really long hallway that composed every bedroom in the house and dead-ended to form a T. Jill is screaming like someone is being murdered or something. I wake up immediately, run up the hallway to get mom and dad because myself, being a mini anon at the time, was way too scared to even think about checking on my older sister, as selfish as that sounds. Dad's already in full sprint and is halfway to our rooms. I get behind him and he quickly opens the door to see my sister crying in the corner hysterically. He grabs her to pick her up and see what's wrong. She's probably 16 at the time, and she yelps. Under her shirt, there are red scratches about 12 inches long that look like someone clawed her in her sleep. From that point on, she sleeps in the same room as older bro. Dad tries to avoid the subject at all costs, I guess to keep us kids from losing our shit at the thought of being attacked in our sleep. Becomes a taboo in the family and is never spoken of again. That hallway was always eerie. Honestly, it could just be an illusion due to how young I was. But I always felt this sick feeling when I had to walk to my room past all of these open doors. Next big memory happens about a month from then. Long weekend, and I'm so excited because I get to sleep in the living room and watch movies up late that we had rented for just this occasion. Dad, Jake, Jill, and I had been watching some dumb action movie, and he finally decided to turn in for the night, telling us to wind it down too. Reluctantly, I get into my sleeping bag on the couch, probably 6 or 7 feet from the TV, and fall quickly asleep. Not sure how many hours had passed, but I woke from deep sleep from the TV being turned on by itself. I shit you not. I know this sounds like a dumb campfire bullshit story, but it's the truth. And I mean full volume, static noise loud enough to wake all 3 of us and force us into one large, scrambling mosh of panic. My oldest brother gets the courage to stand up and turn off the TV, and then we were stuck in the situation of being in a pitch-dark room, with who knows what, possibly still there. All of us sleeping on the same couch, freaking out collectively. Next morning, I woke up and my brother and sister were already awake eating cereal. Ask what the hell happened. Immediately, both of them turned to me and almost yelling exclaim, "Shut up! We don't talk about that, remember?" Shadows in the hallway persist. It's become almost normal to the point that as a 10 or 11-year-old kid, I don't even care anymore when I see something at the foot of my bed. Though saying that, I still never was able to be in my room by myself playing with toys, only for sleep. Jake starts getting weird dreams. I mean really weird. Now both of them are sleeping in my room. Understand the absurdity of having to try to explain to guests why 3 kids all of different ages elect to share one room with 2 perfectly good rooms remaining. It gets to a point that both Jake and Jill elect to live with their mom instead of us. Half-brother and sister from my dad's first shitty marriage. Baffled because they hate their mom. I am all alone now. My parents and I are the only ones left in this big house, and their bedroom is all the way on the other side of the hall. Literally every friend and both of my cousins that ever have stayed in that house all have experiences like the ones I've just written down, and it wasn't until just before we moved away that my father told me what was really going on. My family wasn't all that wealthy, yet we had a humongous home and lots of land. Something like how strange that is just doesn't occur to a kid, I guess. The home was owned by a family before us, who sold it on the cheap because they were trying to get out of the state as quickly as possible. Apparently the dad of that family had beaten their children pretty badly, like required hospital kind of bad, and the father had actually been convicted and was in prison. Reason of why the mother was trying to get the fuck out of Dodge with her kids and mother. The guy never came around looking for them, but that white jug, the jug I had picked up out of the woods that was hanging on our tree, was his. So ooper fucked up now that I look back on it. But my parents were just trying to do the best they could for us kids with their limited budget, and didn't even know themselves until they went and asked around. No shit they didn't tell us kids. Everything made sense now. To my knowledge, no one was ever murdered in that house or killed, but I'm sure there was some really bad history there that might account for what had happened since we moved in. I moved far away from that place, but have recently moved back to the area, about an hour from my childhood home. I've driven past it just out of curiosity and even drove partly down the driveway. The jug is still there and still gives me the creeps.
Not my story, something a friend shared with me that I thought was worth posting. Back when his grandfather was still alive, my friend was around 16 and went camping with his grandfather near their house. My friend was a typical fat kid who plays too many vidya. He's camped before but never needed to learn much about the outdoors. His grandpa, on the other hand, is this Native American from the Passamaquoddy tribe. Seriously, his grandfather was really cool. He was a scrappy man but won awards for his archery skills. The man was a master with a bow. He also ran various sweat lodges up in Maine and was pretty outspoken about Indian casinos and the like. A real cool, old-school gentleman with some great stories and a dry wit. This particular weekend, my friend's grandfather took him backpacking down the river near their home, about 4 miles along railroad tracks and rocky cliffs to get to the site. Friend is all excited to camp in the trees, fish in the river, that sort of thing. They reach this massive sandpit inside what used to be a quarry. The area is low and surrounded by a much higher and denser wooded area. It's tough to climb down into, but easy to get out of. Friend's grandfather. We're here. My friend questions his grandfather's choice of location, but knows that his grandfather knows best, being a wilderness man and all. They set up camp, but the whole night his grandfather seems tense. While they sit around the fire eating dinner, my friend's grandfather is mostly quiet, watching the fire and staring off into the tree line. My friend notices that his grandfather is tensely holding onto his bow, which is about arm's length from his body, leaning against the chair he was sitting in. My friend tries a few times and eventually gets his grandfather's attention. His grandfather showed him some cool things that night, like playing guitar and whittling. My friend eventually gets tired after a few hours and gets to bed. When he asks his grandfather when he's going to bed, his grandfather says he isn't because he has to watch the fire. My friend decides to go to bed and hopefully his grandfather will catch up. A few hours pass and my friend wakes up to rustling outside the tent. He pokes his head out to find his grandfather still watching the fire and staring at the tree line. "Grandpa, what are you doing? It's past midnight." "Watching the fire, son. Go to bed and get yourself some rest. You'll need it." My friend is getting weirded out, but he goes back to sleep and conks out for the night. That next morning, my friend gets up to find his grandfather cooking breakfast over the same fire and whistling happily. He asks when his grandfather went to bed, and his grandfather eerily responds, "When they stopped watching my fire." My friend is creeped out by this and asks what his grandfather meant, but gets no response. They spend the morning doing man stuff, but that afternoon his grandfather is hurried and tells my friend to go get more firewood before dusk. My friend walks out of the sandpit and into the trees to grab some branches. He notices an arrow sticking out of a tree, nearly at head level when he's finally standing up. He shouts back to his grandfather that he's a crazy old man and comes back down with the firewood and the arrow. Grandfather thanks him and just sort of shyly pockets the arrow. My friend pries, but he gets nothing of an explanation. Both of them get the fire roaring again, then they eat dinner and go about their night telling stories. My friend decides to ask his grandfather about his heritage, which his grandfather is excited to talk about. He tells my friend this story about there being two types of creatures in the world: those who watch fires to keep them lit, and those who watch fires to put them out. His grandfather follows up saying that fire brings a lot of good into the world, but there are some beings who don't like that and want to destroy it. When a fire goes out, it is a sign of bad omens. My friend is still creeped out at this point in the story, and he says his grandfather never made reference to it ever again. The night of camping continues per usual, and my friend goes to bed. His grandfather stays out to watch the fire once again, and my friend just gives up trying to get him to rest. The next morning, my friend wakes up and the fire is out, just smoldering ash. His grandfather is missing. My friend starts panicking and looks around the campsite. He finds his grandfather's bow is gone, and it's clear that the grandfather scrambled because things he should have taken, like his boots, were left at the campsite. My friend figures he can wander up to where he found the arrow the day before and see if his grandfather was grabbing wood, though he's definitely panicking right now. On his way up the hill to the trees, he sees tracks in the sand, maybe his grandfather's. My friend makes it into the woods and sees a few arrows here and there, most of them buried in the ground and looking like they were fired from the sandpit bow. One arrow, though, is clearly stuck in a tree. Where it struck is a little above head level for my friend, 6 foot at the time, and attached to the head of the arrow is a patch of fur. The tree bears a small patch of what looks like blood around the impact area. My friend starts shitting his pants at this point, wondering if his grandfather was attacked by an animal. My friend then has a moment of strange clarity, which he can't really describe. He said it felt like one of those miraculous moments you hear about on the news where the parent suddenly can hear their baby crying when they're in danger or something. He decides to go back to camp and relight the fire to maybe signal his grandfather. He gets the fire going, smoky and bright, and then throws on his gear to start searching the perimeter of the pit. Friend is shouting his grandfather's name at this point without any luck. As he's walking the area near where he found the bloody tree, he hears a yelp, almost like an injured animal. This is followed by what he described as one of the nastiest shrieks he had ever heard in his life. He shudders about it still. My friend turns his head toward the direction of the sound and sees his grandfather sprinting through the trees, barefoot with his bow, and beelining directly toward the campsite. My friend runs toward him, and his grandfather surprises him with the biggest hug my friend had ever gotten from him. His grandfather thanks him for watching the fire and then tells him they need to leave as soon as possible. The two pack up, though. His grandfather is clearly slow at this. My friend sees some bruises and cuts on his grandfather's body and asks if he's okay. At this point in telling the story, my friend started to cry and said his grandfather gave him the biggest, happiest smile he had ever seen in his life. His grandfather reassures him that everything will be fine, and the two of them hike all the way back home. After that, his grandfather was back to his normal self, though my friend and him grew much closer. Until he died, his grandfather only recounted the story with my friend in vague snippets, never really telling my friend what he saw or shot in the woods. To this day, my friend swears he saved his grandfather's life, but he'll never find out what it was in the woods during that trip. And as we got older, whenever we partied or went camping as friends, he was just as diligent about the fire as his grandfather was. When we finally made enough fun of him for it, that's when he shared his story.
When I was 23, I moved to the Great North Woods up in Vermont for a job. It was the first time I had moved away from home and was completely alone. I had roommates in college, so it literally felt like this big manly adventure. The town was literally destitute as the factory has shut down years ago, but everybody was too poor to leave. It was smack on the Quebec border, and so the only employed folks in town either drove an hour across the state line or did customs border patrol. Nothing but woods, moose, mountains, and rednecks with nothing better to do with their time except get off the grid and hunt shit. Definitely a wild experience. Anyway, I'm not the best at Greentexts, but I will do my best to share a story I experienced during the time I lived up there. Teaching science in this rural K-12 school, and the school was located on top of a plateau overlooking the river, but backed by wooded mountainsides. Town had a real hunting culture, so it was not uncommon for students to come to school with rifles or fresh kills left in their truck beds. One day, a boy comes into my room with a skull, stripped clean, with a massive exit wound behind one of its eyes. Definitely a canine, though we struggled to pare it down to which kind. He tells me that he shot it himself when it was caught rummaging through a dumpster behind his house, then left it outdoors to naturally decompose and clean. The town had a real problem with night predators, mostly coyote and bear, snatching pets from yards. I asked the kid to describe the animal, thinking to myself it was just a coyote or something, but he said his memory was spotty and he wasn't too sure. Keep the skull in my room and kind of whatever, go on with my day. Fast forward .wmv. A few weeks go by and this same kid shows up with a similar skull, though killed a different way. Same story as before. Killed it. Wasn't sure what it was. Wanted me to have it. Thanks, you weird fuck, is what I should have said, but I let it go and just added it to my collection of weird shit in the classroom. Fast forward to .wmv. Now another week passes, and this same boy turns up with another find, but not a skull. It's the whole damn body. After checking it out, I'm convinced it's a fox and tell the kid that I'm appreciative. But he needs a new hobby that isn't shooting anything that walks into his yard any given night. The fox isn't really fully decomposed, still some fleshy bits. So I take it home to clean it up so I can mount the skeleton. It's getting late and I'm in my apartment sitting on the deck looking up at the mountains. Fox is tied to a tree branch just off the deck until I figure out what I want to do with it, and I pay it no mind. Suddenly, I get this whiff of something gross, almost like decay, coming on the air. The fox wasn't really that rancid, and I had worked with enough dissections, preserved or fresh kills, to know that this was definitely something a lot older than my fox carcass, like a blend of putrefied garbage and rotting meat or fish. Peer down through the beams in the deck and see rustling in the trees. I should mention that my apartment was on the second story of an already impressively tall building. The deck, while narrow, was easily about 50 feet off the ground. The building I lived in was an old town prison and courthouse, so it had some impressive architecture and was a spacious place to live. I was pretty high up even just looking from my window and could easily see the majority of downtown, and also the town across the river if I turned my head or had binoculars. Anyway, I don't think anything of the shaking trees, but the smell is gross enough I move inside and close up shop, so to speak, getting ready to go to bed. I left the fox outside on the deck as the only easy access was either from inside the house or up a fire escape ladder, which itself started a good 6 feet off the ground. I would have to run and jump or use a step stool to climb up. While I'm in bed, I can still smell this acrid odor coming through my windows, which are locked shut. Ugh, burn some incense and ignore that shit. Within a short while, what felt like no time but was probably more like an hour, the smell persisted and even seemed stronger. I started hearing movement outside, below the house. Sometimes teens would dick around outside my building because it had two sides that faced the woods and mountains rather than town, so they could get away with shit. Or it was my roommate, who was a very noisy person. Rationalized it, try to get back to sleep. The smell is still lingering though, even with the incense burning, and I'm starting to hear this scratching noise on the side of the house. Can't scare me, I just ignore it. I'm safe in my bed and screw the outside world. Scratching gets closer. Screw outside. Closer. No nopes yet. Scratching is now very clearly outside my window, possibly even the deck. This smell is so strong I feel like I need to sneeze. Has to be squirrels or some weird critter. I will not be fazed. Then there was a tapping on my window. Shades are already down and window locked because my roommate and I didn't trust local kids not to climb onto the deck and prank us. But this tapping was very clearly not a knock. It was literally like a dog or some other animal smacking the door to be let inside. Starting to get scared, wondering if there's something outside my bedroom window. I decide to move to the living room because, it's safer. Can't hear tapping or smell anything anymore. Thank God. Pass out for the night. Next day I woke up incredibly late, which I remember because it was actually like 1 p.m. and my roommate was already cooking lunch. Apologize for hogging the couch and head back into my room. The shade is up completely. My window is still locked, but something seems off about it. Try to budge and foom. Opens right up even with the locks. Oh shit.jpg. Step onto deck and the smell is gone. No signs of forced entry or anything weird, but the fox carcass is missing. It's just gone, with the rope still hanging from the tree. Find the skulls that I had in my classroom neatly placed near my window, just out of sight that I would have had to walk out to see them. No idea how they got there, because I was one of the last people to leave school, and my classroom was locked tight each night. Later that day, take both the skulls and chuck them as far away from my apartment as they can possibly be, pretty much down a rocky ravine. I can see one of them chip as it tumbles. Tell my roommate the story and she's laughing because she doesn't believe one word of it. I know I'm not crazy. Next day at school, I asked the student if he knew anything, figuring he was maybe getting back at me and set it all up. Kid bursts into tears, but he doesn't admit wrongdoing. Tells me that he didn't kill the animals with the skulls, but found them on his back porch waiting for him in the morning every day until he finally gave them to me. The fox he did kill and was trying to use as bait for whatever was leaving the skulls, but with no luck. I'm dumbfounded, but still convinced this kid's pranking me. Eventually, I more or less move on and for weeks hear and see nothing. Summer rolls around and my roommate is complaining about the garbage being heavy. I take it down to the dump and end up dropping the bag at some point. It rips and one of the canine skulls literally rolls out. I kick the thing and nope out of there. Over the next few days, some more weird things happen. People's dogs start following me in the park whenever I go for a run, and some even follow me home. The superintendent hits a small dog with his car and brings it to me after school to check it out, which he was super creepy about. My typically vegetarian roommate kept spending her nights somewhere else and started stocking our fridge with red meat that I never saw her eat, but it was always being replaced. One day I went for a hike and the same coyote crossed my path 3 times before sitting down and letting me walk past it. And at the coffee shop, I mysteriously got the nickname Dog, even though I never personally knew the owners. I even had an older couple, one of whom I worked with, invite me over late one night to drink, and I left when they started growling at me and acting really weird. I still wasn't connecting the dots, but the one thing that irked me most and convinced me I had to GTFO more than anything was when I got home one night and there was a man waiting for me at the door. He was wearing a heavy hooded raincoat, even though it was clear skies, and just looked unkempt and disheveled. Never saw him or met him before, but he asked me if I was using my grill to cook anything because he had some meat he needed to cook. He then immediately held up a freshly killed rabbit, his hands covered in blood. I politely told him to buzz off and went into my house. And then that night, I heard howling. All night. Non-stop howling. It never ended. The next morning, the lights outside my building were all smashed in, and we found a dead coyote just a few yards away from the apartment. I reported it, and never heard anything since. Needless to say, I moved out of that town within a month after the howling. I got a new job in a different state, which was nice. But I have no idea what the deal was with this place. I want to go back just to see the people I knew there, but the town still gives me the creeps thinking back about it.
This story isn't spooky. Before I tell the story, I'll say I live in a very rural area in Alabama, and I have been diagnosed with a schizo disease. My dad is one of those country types, and we have a lot of old land inherited by our old German ancestors. I was camping out in this land with my friend Trent. We've been friends since elementary. He's a great friend, and I always feel totally relaxed around him, even with my delusions. It was a beautiful night with a full moon and clear skies. When we go camping, we tend to walk out into the woods for a while until we find a good place to camp, so it's always different. Anyway, we found a good place and set up the campfire and had some red beans and rice cooking. I decided to go for a walk, and someone had to stay to watch the food, so Trent didn't come. I go for a walk. I have amazing night vision, and the moon was so bright, so I didn't bring any light source. As I was walking, I noticed I was in a familiar area where me and my brother used to play as kids. It was a shallow river that went pretty far across with a massive tree that has branches you can walk across to the other side. I start walking across the branch and sit down in the middle of it and look at the moon's slight reflection in the water. I have to take some meds before I go to sleep, so I take out my meds and I'm about to take them. I hear someone say, "That looks tasty." I hear this kind of stuff a lot, so I didn't pay any attention to it. But as I brought the meds to my mouth, someone took them from my hand. I looked down and saw a small glowing person floating with my meds in her hand, maybe 2 feet tall. She then ate my meds and smiled at me, then floated away. She was going pretty fast, so to catch her, I jumped off the branch and landed in the river, but I slipped and fell on my back. I immediately knew I had broken my leg. The pain was unbearable, so I let out a shriek, and the glowing person came back and hovered above me. Her face was the definition of beauty, and the moon peeking out behind her, it looked like a painting. That's how I would describe it. It took my breath away, and I completely forgot about my broken limb and the pain. I didn't move a muscle and stared at her face. I'm not sure how long this went on for. She reached out her hand and I took it, and I stood up. She led me out of the creek and didn't let go of my hand. She kept pulling me along. After some time, there were more glowing figures, but a lot smaller, and they were flying all around in a swarm. It reminded me of synchronized dance or something. I began hearing the song, "Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream," over and over again in my head, and my whole body felt so warm. I began to sing as well, and the glowing persons loved me for that. They started to swarm around me and rub against me, and every time that happened, it was like lightning striking my muscles, but in a good way. This went on for an eternity, and then we found a lake. It had a glowing tint to it, but I didn't see the moon in the reflection, so I looked up in the sky, but the moon was gone. Still a clear night, no clouds at all. I looked back at the lake and realized the lake looked just like the surface of the moon. The glowing people were flying in and out of the water. The consistency didn't look like water, it was like honey. The bigger person still holding my hand urged me to follow, so I stepped out to the lake, expecting to be wading through water, but I was standing on the water like it was a solid surface. The glowing person giggled, I assume because I was making an astonished face. She let go of my hand and descended into the lake about up to her chest, and waded out towards the middle. I followed. I stood in the middle of the lake and watched as the swarm danced. I felt like this was where I belonged. I've never felt anything like that before. I laid down on my back and stared at the sky. I really feel like this lasted an eternity. An eternity later, the goddess that brought me here returned and held my hand again. The way she looked at me, it was like she was asking me if I should go back. I shook my head and she smiled, then frowned. I then too frowned and she nodded. I took this to mean it was time for me to go back. I heard a splash, and I fell into the lake. I looked up at the sky, and the moon was there as bright as before. I went back to the shore and walked back to the river. I saw Trent there with a lantern looking for me. Blah blah, this part isn't important. He was angry though. It really happened, it wasn't a delusion. I was visited by the goddess of the forest.
This is the only Innawoods experience I've ever had. Kinda long intro, but worth it, promise. Moved to Ohio last summer to live at this community art house. Pretty cool in its heyday. but rooms hardly get rented now. I'm personal friends with the owners, so I was offered permanent residency provided I help maintain the property. Thus, the move. This house is huge. It's an old Victorian-style home that they converted into their charity house. The house itself was 4 stories with a huge wraparound porch and was built atop one of the highest peaks in the town, in the Ohio Valley. The house, although greatly remodeled from its original condition, still needed a lot of renovations. The only way to enter was through the back door, through the garden, up a flight of stairs that would take you to the 2nd story of the house. You entered the 2nd story into a narrow, dark hallway with painted maroon ceilings. This floor had the kitchen and 4 other rooms that were turned into sewing rooms, print rooms, and other workspace rooms. By the kitchen, there was a large foyer and stairway that brought you down into the 1st floor. The 1st floor was converted into gallery rooms. There was also access to the front porch, but we hardly went out there because it was pretty unstable. Half of the 1st floor was converted into a personal apartment that they were hoping to rent out. This floor also had access to the basement where they had a dark room and other photograph-related rooms, some screen printing machines, and acid baths. Literally, there was this old clawfoot tub full of this acid just out in the open. The old bathroom walls were torn down, so the toilet was exposed too. Nobody used it, but it looked used. The basement has outdoor access but no lock. My friend's mom even warned me to barricade it at night to prevent intruders. On the 2nd floor, right beside the stairwell, was a closet-looking door that led up to the attic. Behind this narrow door was a beautiful wooden stairwell that wrapped upwards to a hall with 5 bedrooms. When I was moving in, 2 of the bedrooms had been rented out. I was offered the apartment on the 1st floor, but it was kinda creepy down there. So I moved into a room in the attic. The one guy is a 23-year-old poet. Seemed pretty cool. We hit it off pretty well. All of his favorite poems were about vaginas, which I thought was pretty cliché and naive, but whatever, poetic artist typecasts. The other was a 19-year-old girl. She was pretty quiet, but would join me on an occasional drink of wine with the poet and myself, and she seemed polite and mature for her age. She was pretty conservative for a girl her age. I thought she was really cute anyways. The poet said he thought something was off about her. Anyways, right across the street from this house was the town cemetery. The cemetery had a zigzag road that went about 2 miles up the side of the mountain. I went for a hike to the top by myself one day to take a look at the valley. One side overlooked the town, but when you turned around, there was a large building and dense woods. I noticed a dirt trail in between a couple of trees. At first, I thought it was on private property because it looked close to the building, but I didn't see any signs against it. The path looked pretty well walked and off-grid. I walked towards the path, and then this bulldozer appeared from what I thought was a dead end or driveway. I walked near a ledge to see that they were plowing new roads in the mountainside. The dozer just popped up from a hidden hill. The driver stops and looks over to me. "Howdy." I was kinda shocked he stopped to say hi. At first I thought I was in trouble for trespassing. "Hello. I'm sorry. Was I trespassing?" "Not that I'm aware of." "Oh well, the road looks great so far. Is it open to the public? I don't see any signs or ropes around." "Not that I'm aware of." The driver looked at me and smirked as if he thought I was trying to be a smartass. "Me neither. So long as you don't get in our way, I suppose you're free to use the trails. I recommend you coming back with a buddy though. There are creatures out in these parts." "Wait," he said. "Creatures." I try to hold a longer conversation, but he just starts dozing away. As I'm watching him drive off, this old man on a lawnmower rides up beside me. I thought he tried to say hello, but it was hardly audible with the dozer close to us. I just instinctively say, "Howdy." He looks at me. "You aren't from around here, are you?" I smile a bit. "What gave me away?" He grinned a wide, toothless grin. "Why, your shoes and hair look too nice to be working out in this sun. You must be from the city." "You got me there. I'm from Chicago, actually." Big city talker. "So you don't know anything about these woods. Just be careful out there. We got our creatures and you've got yours too, I'm sure." MFW again with the creatures. "So I've heard. What kind of creatures are out this way?" "Well, Sonny, I've been living round these parts for my entire life, and there are the things I can explain, and the things I can't explain. As far as you going on a hike goes, I'd just warn you to stick to the roads if you don't have a friend and watch out for snakes and wolves." He rambles on for a bit, but I'm in no hurry, so I let the man speak for a bit longer when he mentions, "I was also best friends with the man whose house you're staying in. He's buried here too. I like to think that I'm still around for him, looking out for him." Kinda creeped me out that he knew the house I came from, considering I didn't see him on my hike up, nor did I mention anything about where I was staying. Anyways, I let you choose your path, young man. He majestically mows down the mountainside. I turn around and cannot unsee the trail. Ultimately decide to not take the trail right away, since there were plenty of daylight hours to burn, so I headed back down to the house to see if the other residents would be up for a hike. Because if I'm gonna die in the woods, why be alone, right? Don't see the girl around, but I asked the poet if he would be up for it because he seemed like the fit type anyways. He was reading a book and said he wasn't really in the mood, which I understood was really expecting too much. I'll go. I turn around and see the girl standing in the doorway to the attic. The poet puts down the book he was reading and looks up. She speaks up. "This house is too quiet for me. It'll be nice to get out." The poet jumps up. "Yeah, what a great idea. Let's do it. Anon, pack the bags. Get some rope even. Let's see how extreme we can get out in these woods." This kid coming off like he proposed the idea, but whatever. I get rope, gloves, snacks, and anything we may need to prepare for this venture. All while this poet dick is trying to hit on this clearly uninterested girl. It's about 3 o'clock when we head up the cemetery road again. We reach the top at around 4, and it appeared that maintenance workers were gone for the evening. The girl notices the building as we get closer to it. "Anon, are you sure we can be here? Isn't this private property?" I talked with a couple of guys earlier. They said it was cool. We get closer to the hidden path I noticed from before. "Here, this way." The poet looks at me like I'm crazy. "Dude, the lady doesn't want to get tangled in shrubs. We can take the road down." I look at the girl, who turned to the poet in disgust, blushing. "I can speak for myself, thanks, and I'm not afraid of any little dirt path." Poet grumbles as I'm indulging. We get to what I thought was the entrance to a long trail, but was just a dirt clearing maybe 5 feet long between some trees. "Wait, this doesn't make any sense. Face it, Anon, your trail is a dud. Let's go back to the real trail before we get ticks." The girl stands on the edge of the dirt path and points ahead. "Do you guys see that?" I walk over to her and notice that, although the dirt trail ends, there are significant clearings in the woods. Many trees have been taken down. Didn't really question it, figured just Ohio industry, but there was a clear path, so we continued to follow it. Poet is bitching most of the time. Girl just quietly observing. I'm leading us when I stop to make a remark. "Wait, before we get too far into this, we should mark some trees. That way, we know how to get back out." I pulled out my knife and marked an X on every few trees that we passed. All the ones I carved were sturdy growing trees. We maneuvered through these woods for about a half mile when we started to see rooftops. As we got closer, we began to see the top of another town. As we get closer to the ledge, we notice a different, visibly walked path. This path was still hidden behind trees and high up the mountain, but standing from it you could see the houses very well. I remember looking down for a moment and noticing that one of the closer homes had a light on. As I was staring, a naked woman passed by the window and pulled her curtains. I suddenly felt the most uncomfortable feeling ever. The girl speaks up. "Wow, look at this view. I wonder if anyone knows about this path up here." The path looked continuous. "So Anon, are we going to stick with this one? Or are we heading back up the mountain through fuck all?" No one else was creeped out, I guess, so I marked an X at the point that we found the path from the woods and continued onward. It's about 5:30 and the sun is starting to set. We had to have followed this walked path for about an hour or so when I walked across my X again. Guys, look at this," as I point down. The poet rages. "Are you kidding me? We've been walking around in a circle for more than an hour? Fuck you, Anon. Fuck this adventure." The poet leaves and heads back up the mountain towards the spot where we came from. I honestly don't care at this point, and turn to the girl. "What do you suppose we do? She's still overlooking the town from this path. It's like you can watch the whole world, and they don't even know that they're being watched. The tone in her voice seriously creeped me out. It was a lot deeper sounding than what I remembered, but she hardly spoke at all. Maybe we should follow him back up the mountain. She turned her head in the jerkiest way I've ever seen. If that's what will make you feel safe, Anon. Seriously starting to nope, and just decide to deck it up the mountain without her approval. I'm on all fours scaling up this mountain. I don't know why I felt the urge to rush out of there so fast, but there was this almost instinctive thought that told me I was in danger. I run up to a point where I feel like I'm hanging off the side. I look down for a moment and see the top of the girl's head. She suddenly jolts her head back and screeches at me. I swear it looked like she had fangs or pointed teeth. I'm literally pissing myself at this point, hoping that it's dripping on her as I'm trying to scale over to another ledge. I'm able to pull myself up with the help of a fallen tree limb. I look over the ledge I climbed for a second to catch my breath, and I don't even see the girl anymore. I yell the poet's name, and I don't hear a reply either. I look down at the tree that helped me escape, and it too had an X. Fuck this. Keep running up as far as I can until I get to a flat patch in the forest where I can run left. I see the clearing between the trees. I walk this path until I hit a dead end. I look down and notice the 5-foot dirt path. Overshot it a bit when I was panicked, but whatever. I'll just climb down, pull out my rope and find a tree to tie it around and scale down. As I'm about to scale down, a hand covers my mouth from behind and pulls me back behind the tree. I turn around. It's the fucking poet. He's all cut up and covered in what looked like shit and blood. I probably looked beat up a bit too, but he looked like he got his shit fucked up. He put his finger over his mouth and pointed down. I turned around to look down at the path again. The girl was there, without a mark on her. She stood on the path, completely still for 2 minutes. She jolted her head back and let out this ungodly scream. She began to violently shake for a solid 30 seconds, before becoming still again. She turned to face the woods again. "I'll meet you boys back at home." She walked out into the clearing. We waited about 5 minutes before heading down and out. We made it back to the cemetery at around 7, and the mower was there. "I'm glad you took my advice and brought a friend." Poet and I headed back to the house, and the girl wasn't there. We looked in her room, and it looked like she packed all of her shit and left. The poet left town the next day. I only stayed in Ohio for a month or so. I eventually asked my friend, who owned the house, about the residents for that week, and she told me that the poet and I were the only people staying there to her whereabouts. I don't fully understand WTF happened in that forest, but I felt like I was being watched the whole time.
Innawoods camping in rural Vermont with two bros R and D, and their girlfriend A and V, we'll call them. Get to the camping spot and get a fire going. Start playing acoustic guitar and singing. Many beers were drunk. Ryan and his girlfriend decide to go off in the woods, probably to fool around. We get to slamming the beer and are about to cook some kebabs on the fire when we hear a scream off in the distance. Think they're just screwing with us, so decide to go investigate and try to scare them in return. We packed heat because of poachers and wildlife, and we're thinking about hunting fowl in the morning. Brandish my Smith & Wesson 20 gauge just to be safe. Go off in that direction, we heard the scream and can hear movement and giggling like 100 yards off. Sounds like a hyena giggling, not full-on laughing, but brush it off as Ryan's girlfriend being a horrible beast with a hideous laugh to match everything else. Get tired after about 20 minutes and yell out, "Okay guys, we give up, it's not funny anymore, dude." And we head back to camp, which is like half a mile back. We get back to camp and there's Ryan's girlfriend just sitting there staring at the fire. "Hey, Ryan's still out there, where did you guys go? When did you get back?" "He's fine." "Haha, okay." We started feeling weird by now, given we're all intoxicated, but I mean my survival instincts took over at this point. Dylan says, "Hey man, come hold up the flashlight while I take a piss." The girl A says she will come too. V says no, you stay here with me and we'll start cooking dinner. V gets in the cooler only to see that the meat for our kebabs is nearly all gone. "Hey, did you and Ryan get into the food? We wouldn't have cared, just ask next time." V says maybe they dragged us in the woods so they could come back and eat and drink all the booze, which is likely. Give V a knife and start off into the woods to pee. This is a convo between Dylan and I. D, dude, she didn't even cook the meat. Me. How do you know? D. The sticks for the kebabs are still in the pack. There's no way she could have cooked it. I don't know what they're up to, but I'm not in the mood for Ryan's stupid pranks tonight. Me. I'll go look for him in a bit. You just keep an eye on her for now. Get back, and V is making kebabs with what we have left. After I eat, I give Dylan my shotgun and say I'm going to look for firewood. With only a knife and a .22 pistol, I head out where I think Ryan is. Nothing but ambient forest sounds till I reach a creek and can hear sobbing on the other side in some brush. Make my way over and get to the entrance of a little cave. It's Ryan. And his girlfriend? Dude, how did you get past me? I would have heard or seen you. Ryan says she's been there the whole time. They were chased by something through the woods, and it left when we heard you guys yelling for us. Ryan said it was talking and saying phrases from before at camp, and even repeating campfire songs, guitar and all. Get the most overwhelming feeling of dread sweep over me and commando it back to the camp. Dylan and his girlfriend say, "Oh, you guys found each other? She left shortly after you did." Promptly grab Dylan and explain the situation. To avoid freaking everyone out, tell Ryan he heard our voices, and we saw a coyote in the woods, so that was what he heard running at him. Tactically shitting our pants, securing the camp, the tension is palpable. Then it just goes quiet, like a complete lack of ambient noise. The air thickens and smells of rotting roadkill. Say, guys, I think we should head on back. Ryan is sober enough to drive. Making up bullshit about a storm rolling in and coyotes so as not to scare the girls. Then in mid-sentence, I'm interrupted by the most blood-curdling roar I've ever heard. Sounds like a maned wolf was having a screaming contest with a banshee. The gig is up. Everyone is shitting themselves as Dylan and I fumble for the guns. See its outline just outside camp in the tree line and send a few rounds its way. More shrieking ensues and we start gathering the supplies and loading them up. We load up in this piece of shit Jeep Cherokee, and I'm drunkenly telling Ryan how to drive a stick. All of a sudden something is walking on top of the Jeep and we can hear heavy breathing. Grab Ryan and throw him in the back seat. Upon doing so, he lets the clutch go, and we lurch forward hitting a tree. Now it won't start. We can see at least 3 sets of eyes reflecting the light from our high beams off in the woods. I have to get out and check under the hood. Dylan covers me. The fucking starter is jammed. I need light, so Dylan lights a flare and I get under the car trying to rig the starter so we can get the fuck out. Done. It should work now. Get it started and toss the flare in the direction of those things. Can vaguely make out their shape. Tall, bipedal, long arms, inverted legs like a dog, and looks like they have dark fur. Put it in reverse and hightail it the hell out of there. See a girl in the middle of the road ahead. It's Dylan's girlfriend trying to wave us down. But wait, you're in the car. Without hesitation, I pass that thing and speed off, hearing the screeches all the way to the highway. Get stopped by cops on the way home and narrowly escape a DUI. We tell him our story and he kinda believes us. Haven't been camping since. Still wonder to this day if I took home any of the right people, or if they're all one of those things.
I've got one. Be on a houseboat trip up the Murray River with the family. Nothing happens until we get pretty far upriver, cross into the next state and into some reserve. Dad and both brother-in-laws decide to go fishing. I stay back with the missus, my 2 sisters and my mum. We're sitting on the top deck drinking, talking and having a good time. The girls decide to head inside. I lag behind to grab a drink out the esky. As I'm going down the stairs, I hear a young girl scream from across the riverbank. Scan the bank but can't see anything. Makes my gut turn as we haven't seen people for a day or more. Fast forward an hour or so. The missus asked me to accompany her on a short walk. We trek Innawoods a fair way. Just a note if you've never seen the Australian bush. It's as thick as a 70s mustache, meaning you can't see more than 3 meters in any direction. Fast forward an hour or so. The missus asked me to accompany her on a short walk. We trek Innawoods a fair way. Just a note if you've never seen the Australian bush. It's as thick as a 70s mustache, meaning you can't see more than 3 meters in any direction. After a while, we break into a clearing, find a rabbit's warren. It's abandoned, but no sign of foxes or cats yet. No signs of any animals, not even kangaroos. Get a bad feeling in my gut. We keep walking and find a dried-up riverbed. Suddenly, the smell of dead rabbit floods the air. Not just dead rabbit, but rotting rabbit guts. Don't have my gun on me, 'cause family holiday and whatnot. Feeling naked, exposed and hunted. Pick up the closest rock in case I need a weapon. The missus starts getting worried and says we should head back. On the way back, the smell follows us. So does the feeling of being hunted. We keep heading back to the boat. I keep my wife in front of me at all times, decide to steer her towards the riverbank but away from the boat. As we get closer, the smell fades but the feeling doesn't. Break out of the scrub about 100 meters from the boat, make our way back there, but don't mention what happened, 'cause they will just call us nuts. Nothing happened till later that night. That night, wake up from a dead sleep at the same time the missus does. All of a sudden I hear what sounds like barking from the scrub. Definitely not a dingo or any dog I've heard before. And I grew up in the bush. Then another one starts barking. And another. Can hear they're a fair ways apart. The barks get closer. When they're a few hundred meters away, they go silent. One more bark. This one was on the riverbank. Get out of bed against the wishes of my wife and peek out the window. See something where she and I came out from earlier. Can't make it out. But it looks like an anorexic person. But it's slumped over. Nope, back into bed and go into scared child mode. Whatever it is climbs onto the boat. Felt the boat shift when it climbed onto the corner. Hear it pacing past our window. Lay there till sun up. Whatever it was eventually got bored and left. The next night we're closer to town. My two brother-in-laws are drunk, making a bunch of noise by the campfire. An ungodly howl comes from upriver. They start howling back 'cause drunk. Silence for a bit, then a scream echoed downriver. Sounded like a person with a pole through their neck trying to scream. We all nope inside. Haven't gone back and probably won't.
Gather some friends to spend the night in the woods. Leave the car in a small parking lot just outside the forest and start walking. About 2 hours later, we decide to stop and have lunch. We're all sitting on a big-ass rock eating salad and sandwiches. Suddenly, I notice a horrible scent. You can tell by my friends' faces they smell it too. Wouldn't know how to describe it. Whatever it is, it reeks. We're not hungry anymore, save the food for later and start walking again. The smell is getting worse. We're walking just to get away from it. Scent starts getting weaker again. Disappears when we reach a lake. Leave our shit on the ground and start a small fire because it's getting cold. Sometime later, one of my friends stands up. Where are you going? Is that a person? Can see someone in the distance, walking towards us. Don't really know if it's a man or a woman. We all stand up and wave at him or her. It's actually a woman wearing a red polar fleece. She waves back. It's kind of weird, seeing someone walking alone in the area, but whatever. When she's closer, she says hi. We all say hi and invite her to join us. Spend some time with us. She seems pretty cool and quite hot, to be honest. It's getting late. Ask her if she wants to spend the night with us. No, it's fine. I should head back anyways. A friend and I walked with her for a while. Just want to make sure she's fine and maybe flirt a bit with her. At some point, she tells us she lost her watch. About 15 minutes later, she says she can continue alone. I'm kinda worried because there's a 2:30, 3-hour-long walk to the parking lot and it's late. Tells us not to worry a few times, give her a Snickers bar and we say goodbye. Keep looking towards her until we lose her. Head back. A few minutes later, the scent comes back. Walk a bit faster until we reach the lake. The smell disappears again. Anyway, talk about random stuff and go to sleep. The next day, pack our things and start walking. Take the long way back just to spend more time together. The bad smell comes back and goes from time to time. Right after having lunch, we see the same woman in the distance. Actually, no, it's not the woman. It's just her red polar fleece hanging from a branch. It really looks like someone has carefully placed it there. Look at each other. Everyone looks confused. A girlfriend says we should look for her because she might be lost. Spend the next couple of hours just walking in big circles around her fleece to see if we find something else. No trace of her. Some other friend finds something near the fleece, kinda like a small circle in the ground near some trees. Inside the circle, there are a few things. A watch and a half-eaten Snickers bar. Friend and I are even more confused. Find some small bones next to the circle. Start to panic because we think she's been kidnapped or something. Whatever. We keep walking towards the car because it's getting real late and we're afraid whoever took her might be near. Reach the car and drive back home. Tell the police what we saw. To this day, we still don't know what was going on that day. She said she had lost her watch, and we noticed she wasn't wearing one, but it's pretty clear she found it at some point. But then why would she take her fleece off and just leave it there? When I posted this story, some people said she could be living in a cabin, or maybe she came there by car and left by car. We know for sure there isn't a cabin in that forest since we know the area pretty well. She could have left by car, yeah, but why would she leave her things there? Some said maybe she left the place by foot. When we left her, it was getting late. The shortest path consists of a 2-hour and 30-minute walk until you reach the parking lot, and then she should have kept walking in the dark because the nearest village is about 40 kilometers away from the forest. A young woman walking in the dark with nothing to keep her warm? Possible, but not probable. We still talk about this from time to time, and as I said, we don't know anything about that girl. Maybe there's a very simple explanation we haven't thought about, and we're just trying to find weird explanations for something that wasn't really weird at all. But I think the creepiest one is the fact that she might have been kidnapped. And maybe we were the last people who saw her alive. And maybe the kidnapper or killer was still around when we spent the night by the lake and when we walked all the way to our car. We haven't found a connection between that and the bad smell either.
Avid backpacker. Camping deep in a swamp. Paddle out about 5 miles from a hunting camp that is already at the ass end of civilization. Find a little island with a couple of trees, maybe about 15 yards square. Hang my hammock, tie my pack up to the tree at the foot of my hammock, and fix some food. Read a book and watch for gators and cool spiders before going to sleep. I woke up about 2 a.m. to the sound of something rummaging through my pack. Damn raccoons. Look at my pack ready to yell at some raccoons. It's not the raccoons. See what I assume is some kind of swamp hermit digging through my pack, pulling shit out and dropping it on the floor. He has his back to me and is draped in what looks like a canvas poncho with crudely tanned hides attached to it. Decide it's best to just lay there silently and hope he moves on. Wait for what seems like an hour before he's finally satisfied with whatever he pillaged and walks off to the other side of the island without ever looking at me. Hear him wade into the water expecting to hear him start paddling, but it's just silent. Lay there trying to process what just happened until the sun comes up. Start picking up my shit that he scattered around. After everything is picked up, the only thing missing is an orange. What? Pack up and paddle back without even eating breakfast. He ignored my $1,000 canoe and hundreds of dollars of gear for an orange. I'm not saying it was a ghost or some shit instead of just some kooky old homeless guy, but that is the weirdest thing that has ever happened to me in my life.
So I grew up with my grandparents on a good few acres in Gaston, South Carolina, a small backwater town. I live on the road doing telecom, but I come here to lay my head when I'm in town. Grandfather cleared this house from the swamp 20 years ago. Him and Grandma have been slowly building this place into their own little spot. This place is still pretty scary though at times. I grew up with demons and spooks, so as long as they announce themselves, I'm generally tolerant. Here's what happened as of 1 a.m. Ball game over. Pissed at the scumhawks for fucking up. Go outside to smoke. Now the house has 2 large concrete decks built on either side. It sits on a sharp downhill towards the pond. I'm standing overlooking the pond and the hill, smoking and pissed. I noticed something, waddling up the hill. Now I'm used to critters and such, but this thing was weird as shit. From the pond to the house is maybe a 1/4 mile. Imagine. It's hard to put into words. This thing looked like a cartoon or something. 3 black balls stacked upwards in a straight line, 4 little black nub feet it scuttled on, and a goofy-ass smiling face like a happy bulldog or happy Down syndrome look. It was so cute I wasn't really scared as it scuttled up the hill, but I knew it wasn't an animal or anything. Called for grandfather. He hops out of bed and runs outside while this thing scuttles up the hill, sees it, runs back inside, and returns with a 12 gauge.
As he shoulders up, this thing smacks into the gate and kinda looks at the fence quizzically. I watch on as grandfather blasts it and it kinda stumbles. I know he hit it with buckshot, but it didn't seem to bleed. Instead, it just kinda looked scared and turned and hauled ass down the hill. Grandfather told me to go to bed and just told my grandma it was a raccoon. He went to sleep soon after. This is a weird place. When I asked him what it was, he looked at me and said, "God made a lot of creatures. He didn't make that one, and I recommend you never find out who did."
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.